Um, Javier, um, I've done this for a couple years now, so I know a thing or two, but I'm at school right now, so I'm not gonna be able to go to practice frequently or even just consult at all. But I'll try to sometimes to teach you guys or if you guys have any questions to answer any questions or to give us an honestly just ask your teachers or to get in contact with you so I can help you guys. Okay, so first, I wanted to start with um, introduction, I guess, to the what we're going to be doing. So, we're going to be doing the metering course, and I'm going to teach you guys first um, how to identify the cuts. So basically, what we do in meat judging is, at least for the first half, is identify all the cuts with priority on the test. So meat judging usually deals with, especially for middle school, high schoolers, the prelim level is all retail cuts. So retail has to do with the process or like the finished product of well product that gets bought in retail stores. So retail would be Walmart or Publix, things like that. And um right those retail cuts have to be identified, mostly because when you let's say you work in a locker room, like a meat locker or a store like that, they buy them wholesale, which will be later on you'll see there. Those are the primal cuts, and then they get cut down into individual cuts. So those cuts can be like T-bone steak, shoulder pot roast, anything you see at Walmart. Those meat cuts are pretty much will be identified. However, we'll only be doing lamb, beef, and pork. So any poultry, that's poultry dressing. We don't do that. So it's just going to be those three animals: lambs, cows, and pigs. Um, Later on, we'll be judging these classes, which uh, we can focus on that later after you guys make it to prelim. And if you guys do make it prelims, I'll probably be going more often. But for now, I'll just be making these videos so you guys can at least learn a little bit about the cuts, and it'll be honestly the same thing I will be explaining to you in person. But for now, just the rules. So regularly, prelims is going to be at State Fair. It will be held outside in one of the arenas. Usually it's the horse arena. This Virginia Cassidy, whoever teacher is, will direct you to where it is and how that process will work. But basically, what we do at prelims is there's going to be oh, 8 tables or 10 tables. Sometimes previous years they have separated the middle school and high schoolers, but sometimes they have them all together depending on the size of who participates. It also depends on like the people who are hosting this event as well, because in, usually the rules state that we have to do 40 cuts to get 40 retail cuts is what's on the test on prelims and also in finals. Um, you'll see here that's what we did prelim identification. So let's see. If you guys ever have a problem with these videos or just need further clarification, just let us know. Okay. Prelims is just going to be retail identification. I'm going to go over lambs this video, and then I'll have a couple of tests for you guys, and I'm going to make videos based on what's going to be on this test. So it's going to be about 5 videos at first. If you guys need to make any more videos, I'll make them. It's just let's go right now. Can't really go to your schools. So for now, you guys might have either 25 cuts. That's what middle schoolers had 1 year, like last year at least. And then for the high schoolers, sorry, we had, I think, either 30 or 35 cuts. That's just for prelims. Um, there's going to be four main things that we're going to identify, which are, I don't know, give me a second. Still learning how to use them. Okay. So, if you guys need a packet of this, your teachers could print it out for you guys. It's just going to be the rules and then the major, um, all the cuts and their details are going to be on the back pages of this. So the main thing that we're going to learn is going to be our species, our primal, retail cut, and cookery. This over here, this is going to be when you do your extra sheet, that's what that is. So you don't really have to worry about that at all because as long as you know all of this, you will be able to figure out the left side. Those random letters and numbers. That makes sense later. On the answer sheet, there's categories that will match the whatever word you use to those letters and numbers. So you don't really have to worry about that. I'll probably come in person and show you guys exactly how to use the answer sheet because I know it can be very confusing, especially if it's your first time. So again, species is just going to be beef, which is cows, pork, which is going to be pigs, and then lamb, which is just lamb. That's the main thing. That's the first thing. Each section of the test, so species, primal, retail, cut, and cookery, they all have a different point of value. But it's really good to have know as much as you can. Um, so primal, that's the main section of the animal. So like it's like a wholesale cut. So it would be like the shoulder or the rack and rack is the same thing as rib. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. Um, but primals are going to be like, so you see here, um, there are the, you don't have to worry about this. That's just for there. So shoulder is one primal, and you can think of that as just the shoulder. We start with there, so it's easier to show you guys how the whole concept is and how to think about when studying. You don't have to worry about foreshadowing between the world. No foreshadowing, but it's not have anything to do with it. Don't use it at all. I don't know. No foreshadowing. So the main things for land, especially, um, are going to be shoulder, ribs, loin, leg, and breast. Each species has a slightly different either names or just different primals. We'll see later on. But shoulder is going to have each primal has its own cuts, so you'll see that we have to identify first the species, which we are going to do land now, and then primal, which is here the major section of the animal. And those sections, those primals, you can think of them as wholesale cuts, but since they're wholesale, they need to be cut down to retail for the individual consumer. So whoever buys in the store, they need to put down further. So those cuts are going to be retail. And then those retail, you have to know how to cook them, obviously. So they're classified as either dry moist, or moist. Dries are usually steaks, and lamb we'll see that a lot of the animals going to be dry. And there's going to be very few. dry moist cuts or just moist. Um, so what else? I feel like I'm using. All right, we're gonna start. So we're gonna start off first, and then we got where's this? Okay. So one major thing is, at least what I learned when I was studying for journey, when I learned I never had a coach. Um, so we had to learn a lot of these things ourselves. I started my freshman year, so my next grade year, and I learned with a couple of seniors and juniors, which they didn't have a lot of experience either, so they had to learn. And we kind of, it was a learning process. So, okay, so major thing is shoulder gonna have just one cut. Or, sorry, excuse me, breast is just gonna have one cut. When you think about these cuts, think about um where like think of it like a puzzle. Okay. So you know how a puzzle has different pieces and you have to put them all together to form a big picture. So it's the same thing here. You can think of each retail cut as an individual piece and it gets pieced together as a whole animal. Um, you have to remember, you have to look at things like bones or cartilage or muscles. Uh, we don't have to name any muscles, especially at your guys' level. Sometimes bones, but that's at the national levels because I've never done it because I've never worked nationals, but like you guys don't have to worry about that at all. So, but we're gonna use a couple of terms like vertebrae. That's honestly the most difficult term, I guess. Vertebrae just has to do with the spine, and it's a bone that I'll show you later on. But for now, we're gonna start with the primal breast, and this has this is called ribs Denver style. You can see here. Ribs Denver style. That is the retail name. That's what you have to know. That's the most important thing. So what we have to memorize is again species primal, retail name, and cookery. In this PowerPoint, you guys are gonna be able to access it later. It's just the name is gonna be the same thing as retail, so you don't have to really try to get that confused. But again, try to remember in order too, because when you're studying, it'll just help you instead of memorizing it in random orders. Try to remember, kind of like think of it as a funnel. Start with a big piece, which is land, the species, and go down a little bit more specific, which would be primal, which is your like big section, and that would be breast, and go down even smaller to the individual retail, which in this case is going to be ribs, Denver style. And yes, the Denver style is very important, like knowing that detail because there are going to be on the answer card different ribs, like rib name, retail name, sorry, and Denver style is this specific one. And don't get them confused because I know when I've taught this and like with my some of my kids, I've ribs gets you guys confused because of the ribs. Just the only reason it is ribs is because it has these bones right here. So it is considered it is named ribs. However, you can see this section right here. It closes. It like when you're thinking about this, think about the functionality of the bones, of the muscles, how the cut looks. It'll show you basically where an animal is. Sometimes not really, because just the cut is either too small to tell or the individual cut is based on a single muscle, and that muscle is obviously the inside, so you can't really tell. Sometimes you can because of the cartilage, how many tendons, things like that. But for this one, you can see some ribs right there. The Okay. We are taking a look here. Okay. Why? But this is super bone. Obviously, you guys have either steroids, some basic anatomy of an animal or human. If he hasn't, it's okay. We don't really go into that with anatomy, so we just need to know a few things. This one, so the rib, those ribs, excuse me, those ribs are what they are an indicator of what the cut is. So that one, look at the ribs, look at any bones, cartilage, fat, anything that can identify some the cut. So again, ribs, and then right here, there's a bone, and this one will connect to another cut that we'll see later on. So that one's going to connect to the square cut, which we'll see later. But bone here, there's a lot of fat right here. That fat is really tough, so it takes a little longer to cook, which makes this one dry moist. Um, for lamb, you don't really have to remember the reasons at all, like in general. You don't have to remember the reasons why things are cooked how they're cooked. You just have to know. Just know. Sometimes an explanation helps, especially with me. An explanation helps me remember why. So that's why I'm going to be giving you guys some type of explanations. But the main thing here, especially for lamb, is to remember for cookery, the easiest way to remember is that think of it like this. This half of the animal is dry moist, and then this half is all dry. So you can think the front of the animal is dry moist, and the back of the animal is all dry. You can think of it like ham is dry. That's why it's really easy to cook and it's cooked quickly. What else? Loin and ribs are like chops. They're cooked dry. They're steaks. So those are easy to cook. Dry is cooked like in a pan, things like that, on a grill. Cooks quickly and at high heat, obviously. And then dry moist is you can put it on a pan, but you have to put a top on it to cook those muscle fibers a little more, or the fat, or whatever needs to cook more. Moist has to be put in either a crock pot or a soup. It has to be cooked for long times, for large amounts of times. So yeah, an easy way to remember lamb is just front of the animal, which is shoulder and breast, cooked dry moist. And in the back of the animal, which will be ribs, loin, leg, all dry. You don't even have to remember the cuts. Just those primals is how you can remember lamb. There is only one cut, which we'll go over later, that is moist in lamb, and it's called in the primal various, which various means that it's going to be in different parts now. You can get it from different parts, which we'll go over that later. But for now, front of the animal, dry moist, back of the animal, dry. Okay, like I said here, bones. Right here, this section right here is closing, which helps you guys remember that it is in the front because if you think about the lungs or the skeleton, sorry, I'm referring to this part right here. Lungs or skeleton, it closes, right? Let's see if I can find a better picture. This one might work. Okay. If you look at the lungs, those ribs are meant to protect the lungs, the rib cage. So we see right here that our breast is going to be right here. This and that's all. Maybe it's highlighted this time. Yeah, it kind of works. That's going to be your breast section. So it's going to be the forward part of the rib cage. If you think about it yourself, it's going to be your sternum and the front part of your ribs. Yeah, that's going to be your chest. So it's going to be the chest of the animal in a way, and the front part of the ribs. That's going to be for breast. And then so that's an easy way to remember it. So again, ribs. See here, ribs. That'll help you guys remember ribs. And then because this section here is closing, you can think of it, oh, it's the front part of the animal, so it's breast. Breast only has one cut. It's going to be dips. Rib stands for stop. So yeah, that diagonal or like that curve is going to be the front part of the rib cage. Remember lambs. Remember in that order, just to help you. Species. You don't have to like say species primal. Just say lamb, breast, ribs, Denver style, tribes. And you guys can go either through flashcards or through this PowerPoint or during Quizlets and just practice with each other or just practice by yourself, but make sure to say it in that order. Next primal that we're gonna go is leg, and that's just we saw earlier right here. I'm hoping you guys can see my mouse, but if not, I will circle it for you guys. Right here, it's gonna be your leg, and obviously, animal has 4 legs. But when we talk about the primal leg, it's just the 2 hind legs. So you can think about it as leg or ham, rump. Those words are used interchangeably. So, but for our contest, it's just going to be leg. Sorry. And your first cut is going to be American style roast. You can think of it, here's the details. Lamb, leg, American style roast, dry. So the first thing we can see is a lot of white stuff. That is skin, fat. That's your top layer, and it. You can think about this as if you imagine yourself always when you're doing these, imagine like just the primal where the animals this part is coming from. This also helps you remember it when you're studying. So you can think about the leg, right? Think of it as like a drumstick. That's how I imagine it in my head. Drumstick, that part where the meat is at the top, that's going to be this. So this has a bone. You don't have to say bone in or bone. Sometimes you have to say bones, but it depends. If it doesn't have a bone. This one, I always thought of it as boneless just because of this picture, but it's not boneless. It does have a bone. It looks kind of like a sirloin bone, which is like a triangular bone at times, but it does have a bone. So you can see here on the bottom right of the picture, it has another picture, smaller picture that has in more detail. Let's see if I can zoom. Hope you guys can see that. But you can see that the way the cut is like either packaged, I guess you could say, or like just held. It's wrapping around something. So usually if there's no bone, or if there is a bone, that muscle will wrap around the bone because it needs to attach to those bones to be able to function, right? So skeletal muscles, just muscles, sorry. Sometimes I try to be a little bit specific, but it's just muscles. They need something to anchor to attach to, so they can function. So like they can either move or do whatever they need to do. Um, so in like animals, just in general, just look at that. If there's a bone, um, it attaches to something. If sometimes you'll see like muscles that are round and there's something missing there, that it usually indicates that it's boneless. But we'll learn about that. So yeah, this one wraps around that bone. It's easy to remember. Another easy way is just look at the outside. Does it have that skin? Is it white? Is it pale? Does it have that skin layer that wraps around the muscle? That's just how you're going to remember American style. It's just that skin. Another thing to remember when you're studying is just that these cuts are not going to look exactly like this PowerPoint. They're going to look vastly different, depending on who's cutting these and who's cutting these cuts, obviously, and like just the animal itself. Sometimes there's a bigger animal and it'll throw you guys off. So yeah, lamb leg, American style roast dry. Again, all of leg, sorry, is dry. So just remember. So it's an easy one. The bone is exposed. So when a bone is exposed, it's called Frenched. I always remembered it as the French. They're bougie, they're rich, you know, they don't want to get their fingers dirty. So they peel off all the muscle and expose the bone. So that's easy to remember. So this one is an entire like drumstick kind of. So that's your leg. You can actually see that leg bone right there. So remember, this one's gonna be lamb leg French style roast dry. So that one's easy. This one, a little bit difficult because it looks kind of like the American style, but this one does not have a bone. So this one is called lamb leg roast boneless, and it's good try. This one, because it doesn't have a bone, it doesn't have anything to attach to. So it needs something to hold it together. Usually it'll be held by netting, but if it's really loose and it has no bones, you can remember it as leg roast boneless. Again, it's the same one as Denver style, it's the same one as the French style roast because it's the same prime. It looks the same. So um, just remember that this one does not have a bone, so the muscles will be very loose or like falling apart. So it'll have a netting. It's easy to remember. The netting is what gives it away because it needs to be held together. So that one's easy, right? Leg roast boneless, dry. Next one will be sirloin half. So sirloin is not a primal at all. You'll hear sirloin, but with sirloin, you'll hear sirloin when you're talking about just food in general. You'll hear sirloin, steak, restaurant, but sirloin, what sirloin refers to is just this section between the loin and the leg. Actually, I had it right here. So where the leg meets, where those legs meet that spine, there's a junction that like has a bone, kind of like your hip bone in a way, but sort of. It looks really different when you cut it up into slices. It'll look very different where you're cutting it. So one section might look like a triangle, or another section will look like a circle. But you just need to remember if it looks kind of like those bones are intersecting, or like in this case, you'll see it that sirloin half will have a vertebrae actually. So that will be a dead giveaway. That's their sirloin half. So vertebrae, if you've ever eaten a T-bone steak, that bone right there, that's a vertebrae. The long piece will be like your rib or your loin bone, but that heel-shaped bone, Let's see if I can find. Let's just search sequel steak. Spell steak wrong. Anyways, this bone. Okay, there's like a kind of like a boot. I think about it sometimes. There's or a heel. Sorry, if you go on like a boot or a heel, it has one piece of the shoe here, the piece of the shoe here, but there's a piece in the middle. That little space, that little gap, is used to hold your spinal cord, your nerve cord. I don't know how you guys call it, but it's to protect that spinal cord and that spinal fluid, which has its own purpose. We don't have to go into that. But yes, this is called a vertebrae. You guys have to remember that because it will show up a lot. So vertebrae is that spinal bone. Most of the cuts they'll be cut in half, so they'll look a little different. But this is just how they're gonna look. But easy way to remember, sirloin half is that it's like a vertebrae or a sirloin bone. It usually looks like that, vertebrae. And the leg bone. You can see this circle right here of a bone. That's just your leg bone cut halfway. Here you can see the vertebrae, but you can also see the sirloin bone. Sirloin bone. Sirloin will either look like a circle, triangle, it might look like here. It looks like this weird infinity sign, I guess you could say. It'll just have, excuse me, here it looks like a circle. It'll just look different. That's because of the section that you're cutting, this bone is very irregular looking. So depending on where you're cutting it, it'll look different. So here you can see kind of like that infinity sign bone, I guess you could say, is there. That's the shoulder bone, but they give away. But another way, like I was saying, vertebrae, that vertebrae bone is there, and that leg bone is there. You can remember that. Another thing is that if you think about it, this sirloin half is about the top half of your French cut. You can see the same face, the meat slab. It's just cut in the middle, and it's the other side. I'm not sure if you guys understood that, get it, but it's like that slice right there. That face that we're seeing is that same slice that's here. So they come together. Okay, so lamb leg, sirloin half, and chop. Next one is sirloin chop. This one's easy. You can see the vertebrae better actually here. That bottom bone, it's a vertebrae. The top bone that looks separated from the other one, that's your sirloin bone. It's a very irregular bone, like I was saying. So it might look like this, it might look like a circle, a triangle. If it doesn't look like a straight line or a curved line, like not like this, but like this you play, it's gonna be your sirloin chop. It's very small. So vertebrae and that sirloin bone is what this looks like. So lamb, leg, sirloin chops, and drop. Next one is your center slice. This is again kind of like a slice of the sirloin half in French style leg roast. It's just the face that one slice straight out of the leg. That's what I thought center slice. You can see that leg bone right there. That gives it away. There's big muscle groups. So lamb, leg, center slice, drop. Again, all of leg, all of rib, all of loin is all blood. So don't really have to run with the creep as long as you know which half the lamb is dry and which half is dry moist. Just remember back that line behind the shoulders is all dry. We're skipping rib chop because it's healthy for you to put that in the PowerPoint. This one's again French rib chop because you can see that bone exposed, you can see that vertebrae. A good way to distinguish rib chops from bone chops is that rib chops is going to be your T-bone steak, so it's going to go straight line. Rib chops, those bones are going to be curved. It's curved because the ribs go where the lungs are, and that curvature is to wrap around the lungs, which need to be protected so the animal can breathe. So remember, think about purpose, think about functionality in these bones and these muscles. So here, that rib bone is to protect the lungs. Easy enough. Curved, so ribs. That bone is curved, it is ribs. And vertebrae here, you can see it at the bottom. And then lamb, rib, rib chop, Frenched. Again, that bone is exposed, so it's Frenched. And it's dry. Okay, so sometimes we'll have retail as a roast, sometimes it'll be a chop. You can think about the roast as a bigger piece-ish, not as big as the primal, but a little bit smaller. Sometimes they're actually the size of the primal, but it's just the name of the cut. So this one's going to be your rib roast. You can see there are about 4 or 5 rib bones. So each rib bone will become a rib chop once it's sliced up. But some people like it to be the whole roast. So a bigger piece makes it roast. Not always, but you can see here that this cut could be cut into, it has the possibility and the ability to be cut into smaller pieces. So this one, you can think of it as roast. And again, that bone right there, that long bone, it's a rib bone. It's very curved. And so you can tell it's a rib bone. It has that vertebrae at the bottom, that heel bone, you can think about it. And so, again, a little bigger, it's a roast. Lamb, rib, roast, dry. So this is that same cut, except it's French because they peeled off all that muscle and exposed the bone. So it's gonna be lamb, rib roast, French, and it's dry. Again, it's that bone is curved, so you can tell it's from the ribs. Okay, we're gonna move on to shoulder. Well, shoulder is dry moist. So here, you can see there is another, again, bones that like curve towards the front. You can't really see it well here, but you can just imagine it. They close the front. And there's this curve right here. I keep forgetting. You guys might not be able to see the. Okay, this curve right here. That's another. That's this part of the rib cage. So it's just going to be the back part, and it will. You can think of it as it being this top part. So you'll see a lot of when you're doing shoulder. It's also going to be called chub beef. The shoulder is going to be this section right here. This bone right here, shoulder blade, it's called the scapular. Just think of it, shoulder blade. It's T-bone shaped, usually 7-boned. You'll see that later, but just think of the top of the shoulder. The shoulder is the top half because it has that shoulder blade. It has ribs, so it might confuse your breast, but if it has that shoulder blade, that give away that it's wow, this really weird. Okay, you can see right here, it's kind of hard to see usually. Okay, this bone right here, there's a bone right there. That is part of the shoulder blade. It's usually called a blade bone. Sometimes it'll be referred to as a 7-bone. Usually in the shoulder, it'll be just that blade bone. Just because it looks like a knife, it's a very thin bone. but it's still those muscles catastrophe. That's the reason the bones. Again, this right here, kind of the rib cage, and then this side goes in. Honestly, the easiest way to remember this cut is that it looks like a square. Hence the name square. This one is kind of like a slice of the front legs. So you see that right there, there's the top, that bone is your leg bone. Circular, similar to the leg. All the leg cuts from the leg primal, but it's just circular, and you can tell it's a leg bone. That's how you know it's an arm chop because the back, the hind legs are legs, and the front legs are called arms, kind of like in humans. I guess you can think about it. Um, but yes, the circular bone is going to be your arm bone, so it's going to be arm chops. Dead giveaway. This one also has a vertebrae. It also has that on the right side, bottom right, you can see that vertebrae, and it has that curvy little, uh, not skin, but it's also has rib bones actually. I have never noticed. You can actually see ribs right there, so you can tell it's also part of the top of the rib cage. So because it's on that curvy, you can see that it's part of the rib cage. Because it's part of the rib cage, it's part of the animal, right? So it's either breast or shoulder, but breast only has the Denver style ribs. That's the only cut in there, so it has to be shoulder. Just think about like when you're doing this, bones, anything, the placement of them, and it'll like direct you as to where um what primal it's from. That'll give you a lot of points just by doing that, even if you don't remember the retail name. But please remember the retail name. It's very important. So here again, that arm bone, those rib bones, give it away to be arm chops. This next one is your blade chop. This one's called a blade chop because it has this blade. Oh wow, that's it has this blade bone. We saw it earlier in square cut, but here it is again. That's just the shoulder blade. It has this vertebrae right here, and again that curvy line that shows that it's protecting something or wrapping around something. So easy. That blade bone will give it away as being blade chops. Oh no, let's mix it up. Okay. So lamb, shoulder, blade chops, dry moist. We're gonna move on to loin. Loin is behind the ribs, so the cuts will kind of look similar, but uh, we look at it. Loin will be those short ribs bones. So it's not as curvy because it doesn't necessarily protect as much because they're shorter bones. So they'll be a little bit straighter. A lot straighter, actually. You'll see. I'll avoid this track, by the way. So here, this one looks exactly like a T-bone, but it's a lamb, so it's called a loin chop. Again, has that vertebrae. This T-bone's loins can be identified because the long bone that comes out of the vertebrae is straight. This was a little curvy, probably because they got this cut a little bit closer to the ribs, but it's fine. Still T-bone, still a loin chop. So remember, lamb, loin chop, dry. Don't confuse it with beef. Beef is the one that has the bone. The lamb that has the loin chop. That's the pork as well is the loin chop. But just remember, T-bone is from the loin, so this one's also from the loin. That straight bone helps you reverse from the loin. This one has even better teeth. This one's the loin right. You can see that T-bone right there. It's going to stretch all the way across the other side, and you can actually see it. On the bottom right, there's a picture that shows the opposite side. Actually, no, it's the same side, but it should show on the other side that T-bone. Again, it's a roast because it's a big portion. It can be cut down into smaller pieces. Oftentimes, roast will be moist, but here it's dry because of the primal is dry. So it's going to be lamb, loin roast, and dry. This is the primal stuff. Well, we're done with it's like 27 cuts. It's very easy. That's why I start you off with that because it's very easy. The next primal is called various. Again, various just means it comes from different parts of the animal. And the only cut is shank. It looks like a leg, but it's very small. It's about the size of your guys' hand, probably. I don't know how big your hands are, but it's very small. This one is called lamb. It's from the primal various. Shank, it's called, and it's moist. It's moist because it has a lot of. It's very globular. It has a lot of fat. It has a lot of veins and cartilage, so it's really, really, really tough. So you have to, if you want to eat this, you have to cook it in like crock pot or like a stew. But again, very globular, has a lot of veins, a little bit cartilage. It's very tough. That's how you remember it's moist. It's various because it can come from all four legs. Two legs are from lamb. Leg. The other legs are from the front part, right? So because there's different sections, and those sections, those are like part of different primals. They can't just say they're part of that one primal. They have to say various because it can be from different parts. The next one is variety. Variety are all organs. It's very easy. So this one's liver. I don't know if you guys have done anatomy, but it looks like any other liver, kind of like human liver. So liver stretches from one side of the stomach to the other side. It wraps around the whole abdomen of the animal. But easier to remember cookery for organs, for variety, sorry, is that all organs are dry moist. All of them. Except for oxtail and tripe, which is your stomach. Not your stomach, but the cow's stomach. So this one's liver. Lamb, variety, liver, dry moist. This one's easy. It's a tongue. Lamb, variety, tongue, dry moist. So another thing that's going to set variety apart is that you have to remember that those organs look very similar in all species, but you have to remember the size difference. So lamb is smaller than a pig, pig smaller than a cow. So it's going to be a big medium. So the smallest one is going to be your lamb. It's going to be, you can think of this tongue as being the size of maybe two of your fingers, maybe three. The pig tongue is going to be bigger than that. It's going to be about twice the size. And then the cow is going to be the size of your whole hand. It's going to be huge. Well, actually, it's probably going to be two of your hands because that thing's big. But yeah. Also, these little like kind of like pimples on the tongue that will also show. Next one is kidney. Pretty simple. It's kidney. Again, it's going to be small. So this kidney is probably the size of just your fingers. And then pig is going to be a little bigger. And then in cow, it's going to be a lot bigger. So lamb, variety, kidney, dry moist. Okay, so the heart is a little bit easier to remember its sizing because they actually taught us that. So this is a lamb heart. The size of the lamb is going to be the size of your fist. And then for the lamb heart, for pig, it's going to be the size of your entire hand. And then for cow, it's going to be the size of your head. That's how big cow heart is. So lamb, variety, heart, dry moist. And that's the end. If you guys have any questions, you guys need me to either give a clearer explanation because I know it's difficult, especially because it's your first time. Just let me know. Let your teacher know. They'll come in contact with me. There is a Google Classroom. It has this PowerPoint. It's gonna be. I'm going into my sister's account because I'm locked out because I'm not in the school system. Here it's gonna be all meet cards complete. These are the meet cards that we would order from FFA. They're the same cards. I just scan them and put them in a PowerPoint because I know sometimes you won't have access to these cards, or I know the middle schoolers won't even have the cards yet. It's like $50. They're expensive, and especially if you lose them, break them. It's just better to have the PowerPoint, anyways. All the cards are in there. All the information's in there. So yeah, you guys just look at that PowerPoint. You guys can look over it. You guys can look at the any other information that's in here. Honestly, if you guys just look up FFA meat judging cuts and specify what, it'll appear in as a Quizlet or Kahoot sometimes. There's resources out there. If you guys just research it yourselves, it'll usually be the same. Just remember, it's not always gonna look the same, those cuts. They're gonna look different. So you have to look at little details because it can look different and it'll throw you off a lot. I know it is for my team. But yes. Again, any questions, talk to your teacher, talk to me. Your teacher will come in contact with me. I will keep making these videos for you guys. You guys can, get through it. But keep studying your own time. Please, a lot. It helps. Well, have a good day, and thank you for having me.